The third-generation aircraft carrier Gerald Ford. Does the U.S. need such ships? America has the largest fleet of aircraft carriers at 11, and all of them are nuclear-powered. And any of these ships, I emphasize any of them, even the oldest Nimitz launched almost 55 years ago, is superior to any aircraft carrier of any other country. This simple fact clearly shows the military might of the United States and its dominant position in the world's oceans. The last of these carriers stand out, the Gerald Ford with order number CVN-78. This is a third-generation aircraft carrier. Often because of its power, this ship is called a super aircraft carrier. In this video, we'll try to understand why America needs it. After all, its cost was an astronomical almost $18 billion. This is 3 times the cost of aircraft carriers of the previous generation. Maybe that money should have been spent differently. Hospitals should have been built and housing should have been given to the homeless. Let's look at this question objectively. First, let's talk about why Gerald Ford is considered a supercarrier and what makes it so different from the previous generation of aircraft carriers, where, after all, almost 14 billion U.S. taxpayer dollars went. If you compare the appearance of Gerald Ford and the same Nimitz, you won't notice much difference. The Gerald Ford is 1,105 feet long compared to the Nimitz's 1,092 feet. The waterline width is almost the same, 134 feet. The displacement is the same, 98,425 tons for both ships. However, if you look closely, you'll notice that the silhouettes of the ships are somewhat different. The Gerald Ford's deckhouse is located closer to the stern and the bridge is not visible. It's located on the lower deck to reduce the size of the superstructure. The superstructure is located over the sideline. This made the deck more spacious. But that's not why the CVN-78 costs twice as much as any other aircraft carrier. No, of course it isn't. It's all about the stuffing. Let's start with the heart of the ship, its engine. The Gerald Ford has a nuclear engine, of course, but the reactors are completely different. The ship's equipped with 2 Bechtel A1B nuclear reactors. They're much more advanced than the Westinghouse A4W used earlier. First of all, they're more powerful, 700 megawatts versus 550 megawatts. That is, the power is increased by almost a third. The 2 Bechtel A1B reactors produce 1,400 megawatts versus 1,100 megawatts from the 2 Westinghouse A4Ws. And that 300 megawatts made it possible to do away with the 4 steam turbines and 4 diesel engines that are available on Nimitz-type aircraft carriers. Because 1,100 megawatts was not enough for such a 100,000-ton giant, but 1,400 megawatts is more than enough, even for the operation of laser weapons, which the ship is going to be equipped with in the long term. But this is not the end of the benefits of the new reactors. They're designed for 50 years of operation and do not require the reloading of nuclear fuel. On the Nimitz, the fuel has to be reloaded after 25 years. And this is a rather dangerous, time-consuming, and very expensive procedure. As a result, the labor intensity of reactor maintenance has been cut in half. The second big difference between Gerald Ford and the Nimitz is the catapults. It was the first to have electromagnetic catapults instead of C-13 steam catapults. This catapult allows the aircraft to accelerate more smoothly and hence avoid too much stress on the aircraft structure and consequently breakdowns. As a result, the number of aircraft series increased from 140 to 160 per day and up to 220 in crisis, compared to the Nimitz-type aircraft carriers. Even an extra 20 sorties is a lot. Think of it as an extra squadron working on the enemy. Each F-35C, which is part of the aircraft carrier wing, can carry 10 JDAM guided bombs weighing 2,000 pounds. That means 200 more of these bombs per day will fall on the enemy. And thanks to the higher capacity electromagnetic catapults, the Gerald Ford has 3 instead of the Nimitz's 4. The carrier carries F-18EF Super Hornets, F-35C, E-2D Advanced Hawkeyes, and EA-18G Growlers, as well as MH-60 Sierra and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, a total of 90 aircraft and helicopters. The third significant difference is electronics and computers. Thanks to them, it was possible to automate many processes. As a result, the labor intensity of maintenance of devices and systems of the aircraft carrier was reduced by 30%, which allowed to reduce the crew, compared to Nimitz, by 500 to 900 people. The figure's not yet been finalized. The actual size of the required crew will show the operation of the ship. Finally, the last significant difference is the use of stealth coatings. Of course, you can't make an aircraft carrier completely invisible, but the 100,000-ton, 1,105-foot-long mahogany is indistinguishable on cruise missile radar from any of its escort ships. Which one to hit? Of course, the implementation of all these innovations took both time and money. Problems began at the design stage. The situation was not saved even by the fact that, for the first time in American shipbuilding, the ship was designed in a 3D design system, which automatically detects inconsistencies. After the ship was launched in October 2013, it took 9 years to fine-tune all of its systems. This affected the weapons elevators, the electromagnetic catapults, and even the human waste disposal system. And the radars proved so problematic that it was decided to develop an entirely new set for future Gerald Ford-class ships. In their report, the annoyed members of the Government Oversight Board even wrote that the aircraft carrier was an example of how not to build ships. And even now, it doesn't have it all worked out. In November 2022, just after her acceptance into service, Gerald Ford went at the head of a strike group of ships to the United Kingdom, to the naval base at Portsmouth. The new ship was assigned to the U.S. Second Fleet, whose area of responsibility included the North Atlantic Ocean. The aircraft carrier was accompanied by the Ticonderoga-class missile cruiser Normandy, an Ohio-class nuclear attack submarine, 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, Ramage, McFall, and Thomas Hudner, a Legend-class Coast Guard destroyer, Hamilton, the tanker USNS Joshua Humphreys, and an ammunition dry cargo ship, Robert E. Peary, among other ships. According to available information, not the entire aviation wing of 90 aircraft and helicopters was deployed aboard the aircraft carrier. This is due, apparently, to the fact that the aircraft carrier has not yet been fully certified. For example, out of 11 cargo elevators with electromagnetic drive, only 5 received certificates of fitness. The others have only recently been repaired and are undergoing tests. They're used to move military cargo 20 times a day. Now back to the question posed at the beginning of the video. Is there such a need for such a super expensive and also problematic ship? Wouldn't it be better to spend $18 billion on something more pressing? Have all the problems in America disappeared? Our answer is this. We strongly believe that the money is well spent. Unfortunately, our world is far from the paradise from which Adam and Eve were cast out. There's much violence in our world. And like thousands of years ago, the formula is still true. If you want peace, prepare for war. If you don't want to feed your own army, you will feed someone else's. America is by far the most powerful country in the world. This allows it to dictate its will to other nations and to establish rules in the world which are, above all, beneficial to the United States. Of course, some people do not like this. America's world leadership is increasingly being challenged by China. Russia is helping it do this. The Chinese military capability is greater than that of the United States. And now imagine that China has become the leader, that the world's currency is not the dollar, but the yuan. What will happen to America with the standard of living of its people? The answer's obvious. It'll go down substantially. That's why it's necessary to have such a super modern weapon, such as the aircraft carrier Gerald Ford. That's why it's already firmly known that after Gerald Ford, another aircraft carrier of the same class will be built. It should be joined by another president, John F. Kennedy, in 2024, the USS Enterprise in 2028, and Doris Miller in 2032. Miller was not a president. He was just a sailor, a participant in World War II, but the first African American to receive the Navy Cross. Despite criticism from many experts that in the age of hypersonic missiles, the rapidly growing threat from unmanned surface, underwater, and flying vehicles, billion-dollar floating airfields are no longer relevant. But most military analysts believe that nothing has fundamentally changed. The pride of the U.S. Navy and aircraft carriers will remain in demand. It's just necessary to keep up with new technologies of strikes and repulsion. What's your opinion of third-generation aircraft carriers? Do they still justify the funds that have already been spent on them and intend to spend more in the future? Or can they be spent more wisely? Write your comments below this video. And of course, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications not to miss new interesting videos.